Ok, bienvenue à tous. Encore une fois, je vous rappelle, on va faire la conf en anglais. Si vous voulez une traduction, il y a des casques. Et avec cela, je vous demande d'accueillir, s'il vous plaît, le producteur de La Reine des Neiges 2, Peter Del Vecho, le réalisateur Chris Buck et la réalisatrice, scénariste et directrice créative du studio d'animation Walt Disney, Jennifer Lee.
Allez-y, installez-vous.
Chris, welcome. On entend, fait longtemps sur ça, il faut peut-être pas. Voilà, Jennifer, please have a seat there. Okay. Alors, here we go. So, the bar was so high after the first Frozen. What were the biggest challenges for you? Ma question, c'était tellement un succès phénoménal autour du monde, le premier Reine des Neiges. C'était quoi les challenges avec ce deuxième? Jennifer?
Well, I think the challenge is always story. We joke, we naively decided we wanted to stay in this world together. We missed them. We had a lot of questions. I think we finished the first not thinking there was more story to tell and then uncovering it. We did come to our end pretty soon, so that helped us. We knew where we wanted to go. But every day, the story to tell, the right story to tell, a story that evolves, that pushes us to new places, but also lines up with every character. We were working this story probably until end of August.
A couple months ago.
Yeah, we blew past our deadline. Thank you, Peter, for letting us do that, for getting us on time. But it certainly, we didn't know what we were getting into, thankfully, but we're glad we did it.
Chris, how about you?
Well, the challenge, saying the story is always the biggest challenge. So we start there. We did have technical challenges too, and that was once we started with just a wind spirit, and that was the first challenge. That was tough enough. And then of course we had this water horse, which is incredibly difficult to do. We added earth giants and then the fire spirit. So all of those combined, that was another challenge. Our artists are incredible though, our team. We would always throw these challenges at them, and they would not only say yes, but they would come back to us with something even more spectacular than we could have imagined.
Peter, what was that like for you as a producer? Were you tearing your hair out by August? Est-ce que c'était trop difficile pour vous en tant que producteur?
Movie, which is a lot about change. I think the story kept changing and evolving. The one thing that doesn't change is our release date. So working with the crew to get the full potential of the movie up on the screen. But what was so positive is the crew started to respond to the story that Chris and Jen were telling, and that inspired them. And so amazing things happen when, again, you're inspired by the story you're telling.
Est-ce que vous avez vos propres questions?
Hey, hello everybody, bonjour. Why 6 years? Why it takes such a long time? Pourquoi ça a pris autant de temps? Pourquoi 6 ans? Quand avez-vous décidé exactement de faire une nouvelle Reine des Neiges? When did you exactly decide to make Frozen 2?
It was a good year or more after the movie came out when Chris and Jen were inspired by seeing the characters of the short we were working on move again. But the process of animation, it's about evolution of the story. That takes time. It's about finding the story. And then actual animation, production animation, takes a good 1.5 to 2 years. So to us, the time went by very quickly.
Bonjour. J'aimerais savoir comment vous avez réfléchi au personnage d'Olaf et comment vous avez fait pour trouver cet équilibre pas évident à atteindre entre d'un côté en faire un personnage qui amuse les enfants et en même temps un grand sage métaphysique.
Okay, so she's asking really specifically about Olaf. What was the key to finding this balance between this funny little child pleaser and this sort of metaphysical wise man?
Well, we like to joke that Olaf is pure snow, but pure white. That's the innocence, this pure snow, like fresh fallen snow. But he's also got the word man after him. And so the juxtaposition of those two things were sort of the recipe for Olaf. Imbued with the love of these two girls when they were little, their innocent love. So he is this lovely combination of a young child with the vocabulary of a man, not always the understanding. But I think watching him grow in this a bit, in a way that children, I think facing change is very difficult for kids especially, and for all of us, but looking at it through the eyes of Olaf could be inspiring, but also true to those feelings you have as a child. So we love, that's part of what makes Olaf is that duality.
Were you worried at all about going to the dark places that he goes with Olaf in this film, without obviously saying too much?
No, not really. I mean, we're always inspired by Walt Disney's films, you know, and his legacy. And, you know, with Snow White, Pinocchio, and Bambi, and a lot of the films, he goes to a dark place. He goes to the dark place that fairy tales go to. So we're inspired by that. And you know, personally, I know that films like Pinocchio, they help me through certain challenges. If I could see and relate to the characters going through these what are almost insurmountable challenges, but come out in the end much stronger, but also with a happily ever after. So I was always inspired by those. We all are inspired by those, and we know that children can handle quite a bit. We never talk down to the kids, and so even though, like you said, we may go to what looked like a darker place, we know it's actually better for the film overall.
Une autre question, oui, le micro ici et puis après là. Allez-y.
Bonjour, je voulais savoir si l'idée d'une suite était déjà dès le départ réfléchie ou elle n'est arrivée que quand il y a eu le succès de La Reine des Neiges 1.
Okay, so did you know even before the first Frozen came out that you would want perhaps to do a sequel, or did you see the success of the first Frozen and say, okay, we're going to do a sequel?
We did not at all think about a sequel. We were just trying to crack that story. And we did end it really feeling that it was a happily ever after. In a funny way, we get this question a lot, if it was a success, and in a way that could have been a deterrent. We really couldn't look at it that way, or I think we'd make it for the wrong reasons, and we weren't pressured to do so. We were actually starting to develop something else, and it was us doing that little short. We fell back in love, and it was us realizing that we hadn't completed this story. Now to me it feels complete. So, but I thought the first one did. But it really was us feeling Elsa was just accepted for her powers, but why does she have them? What are all of them meant to do with life? How does change come for you? And how do you cope with change? Looking at fear versus love in terms of change. Once we started there, we couldn't get out. We were hooked. So it really had to go that way. I think, if anything, the most important thing for us was to put the pressure outside the room, because if we carried it, we would make the wrong decisions for them. At least we didn't know if the world would respond to the first one. We can't know with the second. But if we built the first one from these characters and what their journey was out, we did the music that way too, and we just promised each other we'd do it that way the second time. And we did, and in a way, it's as we're going out to the world right now, it's hitting us all over again about the first film, because we've been so focused on the story.
Jennifer, you just said that you feel now with this one the story's complete. Are you thinking about a third? Could it go down that road? Is it Pensez à troisième éventuellement?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
That
one's for you.
That's for me. No, I mean, it really felt like we 1 and 2, we wanted to feel like a complete journey. Ask us in a year if we make some bigger discovery. It takes a lot to do these films. It takes everything you have. You have to see it. You have to feel it. And if you can't do it. And so for us, I love the last frame of this film. We've had that for a long time. I love the feeling it gives me, and I literally have not personally thought past that moment. So.
Voilà, donc une autre question, c'est qui le microphone ici?
Bonjour. Le succès de la chanson et de la musique du premier a même dépassé le film. Est-ce que ça a obligé à concevoir les chansons et les musiques du deuxième de façon plus autonome, de façon plus indépendante, de façon différente?
He's saying the music from the first film the success almost surpassed the film itself. Did you feel when you were making the music for the second one, it was more of its own autonomous thing, looking at it as it having its life of its own, or was it always an integral part of what you were making with the movie?
Well, the music and the story, you know, they have to be crafted together. So they are a very integral part of the story. The one thing we did differently this time is look at Frozen 2 as sort of Act 2 of a stage musical. So where Act 1 is usually the setup of characters and the characters' wants, this time Act 2 you can go a little deeper, you can go more emotional with some of the songs. Of course we still have a lot of the fun songs in there too. But that could differentiate between the sort of the songs from Frozen 1 and the songs from Frozen 2 and give it its own feel.
Just about the songs, was it important to you this time to make sure each or almost each character, apart from Sven, who sort of does, gets their own song, their own solo? Ma question, c'était important pour eux que cette fois-ci chaque personnage avait leur propre solo?
What's interesting is you have the song has to come from the story, and in Frozen 1 we wanted so much for Kristoff to have a real song, and the story didn't lend itself. He was so reserved, and he was so withholding. He would not sing like that. The most you could get was affection with his reindeer. But you go, in this one, there were other characters who wanted to have songs. Matthias was one we were thinking about, the Northoldra folk in a different way. But emotionally, it's those moments that sing that tell you, and we ended up here. The delicious thing was that it really did lend itself for a Kristoff song. And when I felt like I'd been waiting for to get in that man's head, it was really great to get inside and know what it looks like an 80s ballad in there. But it really has to come from the story, and it's that hard moment when you realize a song isn't going to happen for a character, but you have to accept it because it's right for the story.
One of the powerful songs too was that we from the beginning had talked about was a song for Anna, and that comes much later in the film. And one of the things we had talked about with Anna is that Anna is a character, she seems very optimistic and fun and happy most of the time. But what we found out, sort of analyzing her, is that she's actually a character that chooses to be optimistic. Things may not be, so sunny all the time for her, but she wakes up in the morning and makes the choice to be optimistic. And we thought, well, how can we show that with a song? Really take Anna to a place where she's really struggling, at quite a low place, where then she makes that choice to take the next step and keep moving. It was very powerful, very moving for us.
Une autre question qui a le Voici.
Merci pour ce film. J'ai le sentiment que le film était beaucoup plus long que ce qu'on a vu, et je voulais savoir si vous pouvez nous en dire plus, et éventuellement, est-ce qu'il y aura des courts-métrages qui vont compléter ce film?
Long dans le sens à regarder.
Danse.
Yeah, he's saying he felt this film was much longer, not in the negative sense, but in like the denseness of the story. And he's wondering if there might be perhaps other short films or other things qui vont un peu résoudre d'autres.
Oui.
Voilà, that might kind of talk about other things that we kind of get a little glimpse of in this movie that aren't developed perhaps 100%.
Well, we always say never. I think one of the things we're having fun with is really growing the talent in the studio and finding opportunities for them to play with our characters in different ways. So we will see, perhaps.
What's that like when you talk about the talent in the studio? I mean, are the actors very involved in the creation of these characters at all? Ma question, c'est sur les acteurs qui font des voix, est-ce qu'ils sont vraiment impliqués? Est-ce qu'ils peuvent aussi improviser, développer? Can they improvise?
We work very closely with the actors, particularly the actors who know these characters so well from the first. They really helped develop along with us the story. But when we say the studio, we also mean the crew. It's been 6 years since we worked with them. They've gotten stronger, technology's gotten stronger, and they brought so much to the process as well. In many cases, they inspired us, they surprised us, what they were capable of as well.
We have animators who know these characters as well as us. What's a very interesting thing about Disney animation in particular, it's hundreds of artists together from film to film. We get to know each other, we see each other's strengths, but they are artists. So, some draw, some animate, some technical, but that combination, you'll see people will rise up with a vision that is just incredible, and we want to support it, and that's something that Walt started and something that we continue to do.
Alors ici.
Hier soir sur scène, le mot valeur a été prononcé plusieurs fois, notamment celui de courage. Est-ce que chez Disney, à l'heure où on parle beaucoup de collapsologie, vous vous sentez investi d'une mission d'envoyer avec votre force de frappe beaucoup d'optimisme, notamment aux enfants? Et comment vous est venue l'idée de la mémoire de l'eau? Parce que est-ce que cet optimisme repasse par une reconnexion, par exemple, aux éléments, dans les questions dans le film, et à des choses finalement relativement essentielles?
So she was saying last night on stage, you were talking a lot about values, talking about the importance of courage. Et si j'ai bien compris les questions, c'est par rapport vraiment à la mémoire de l'autre notion ou juste les valeurs en tout?
Non, la reconnexion aux éléments.
Okay. Oh yeah. So the values, courage, all of that being connected to the elements, like this idea of the memory of water and all of that. If you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things interesting for us is as we started to build this and say where did her powers come from and why? We didn't have the answer to that when we started Frozen 2. But one of the things we loved was her magic is connected to nature. We wanted to keep ourselves in the realm of Scandinavian magic because that's where we started, because magic could be anything. And as we were doing research into Old Norse myths and to folklore, the elements started to come to life. But we really realized Elsa's magic is of water. Water is fundamental to life. There's something in there. And then we read this scientific statement that water has memory, and in the sense that all the water we have is all we've ever had. It passes through all of us. It absorbs. It dissolves. So you could dig down deep in a glacier and learn about our past. And then we stood on a glacier and we imagined being Elsa and this feeling that she had access to memories, to us, and it just evolved from there. So what's so interesting is all the parts of nature and all of the things about the land really came from her. Our discoveries, I should say, came from Elsa, and we discovered it with her, which was really emotional for us as well.
Une autre question? Voilà, ici.
Oui, pour continuer un peu sur le thème de la nature et l'environnement est vraiment au cœur de votre film. Est-ce que c'était vraiment...
Ah pardon. Ah non.
Non, celui-là. Ah voilà, pardon.
Okay.
Donc pour continuer, est-ce que la nature et l'environnement, c'était vraiment une volonté particulière de le mettre au centre de l'histoire, sachant qu'aujourd'hui c'est un thème qui est important et aussi sûrement pour éduquer les enfants et les consciences.
Obviously, nature is a very hot topic in today's world. Was it a real choice to focus on nature in particular because of the global context, or particularly speaking to children?
Well, the idea actually came from Elsa once again. It was really driven by the story and by Elsa, and Elsa's connection with her own powers and connection to nature because of that. And sometimes we even thought Elsa was sort of half nature already. So it was all about that and her connecting with all the different elements and how she would feel about that. The one thing that I think is fantastic is that young people are seeing the film and they are seeing nature in all its kind of wonderful glory. And for me, there'd be nothing more special for me to see a young person walking through the forest someday and then sort of talking to the wind as a character and being embraced by the wind or any of the other elements, but showing that sort of wonderful respect and connection with nature.
Jennifer, you have a daughter. What kind of effect did she have on this story and your work? Ma question, elle a sa propre fille. Je demande quelle était l'influence de sa fille sur le film.
My daughter was very much inspiration for Anna in that a lot of us relate to Anna, but the sort of act before you think, being fearless, sometimes too fearless, but not perfect, and wearing your heart on your sleeve, and those things that we often lose in life, but can be quite a strength. And I think that was very inspiring. And for all of us, we talked about our families a lot, our children all very much inspired this story. You mentioned sort of nature. For us, this was a film about growing up and about facing the real world and your role in the world. And that affects, you have a responsibility to participate, and that includes your connection to nature, to your community, to each other, to your family, and seeing our characters go through that. Coping with change is difficult, and growing up is difficult, and that was stuff we've watched with our children, talked a lot about, and wanted to say, let's do a film that says, I know it's scary to step into the unknown. I know there's so many things going on in the world right now that's overwhelming, but you have a role to play, and you can accomplish a lot, even by walking through those fears. And so that was it was daily conversations about all our children in this case.
Dernière question. Ok, une dernière petite question? Oui, allez-y.
Le film ressemble beaucoup à l'ambiance de Pocahontas. Est-ce que vous êtes inspiré du film de 95?
He says he feels there's lots of similar themes, that it feels similar to Pocahontas. Was that something that you thought about? Did you think of that at all, those themes?
No, not really. I mean, I can see how you might feel away, especially with sort of the wind and the leaves and the autumn. I can see how you would see that. I worked on Pocahontas. It was an animated Pocahontas, and I didn't really think about it very much. Anna and Elsa and the Frozen world is so different than that, and we really just grounded ourselves in those characters, and that's what really sort of kept us going.
Thank you so much to all three of you, Chris, Jennifer, Lee.